begin every podcast, like back at home, like I literally go like, all right, let's do it.
Try not to laugh after you do that. God.
No, literally, you should see Nick and I. We're like, we're like smacking our chests. We're like rubbing our faces. Like, okay, like hyping.
As long as you're rubbing in your own and you're not like rubbing each other. It's that changes everything.
Yeah, it does.
For real.
Just a bit.
For real. All right, well, welcome everybody to the 6th Act with Purpose podcast. I am your, I guess, co-host. I don't even know what I am anymore. I'm Adam Peddle. I am the operations manager here at Act with Purpose. And right across from me, we've got Adam Schupruck, the school director. Hello, Adam. Welcome.
Hey, Adam. How's it going?
Good.
Super excited to be here as I properly sit in my chair and get ready for this wonderful conversation we're about to have today.
Yes! I love it. And then we have John over here as well. Welcome in, John.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Good.
I did my chest.
Beating your chest.
In my chest beats.
Doing very inappropriate things with your mouth. Fantastic. I feel really gross already. Great.
Nice.
Welcome, everyone.
That's my job. Make him feel uncomfortable. And then, how are you feeling? Are you feeling comfortable here, Ahmed? He's our guest. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in, Ahmed.
I'm feeling great, especially because I just, for the first time, realized how to properly say Adam's last name.
Milestone.
Part of the reason why I refer to you as Adam T and Adam P is because up until now, I wasn't entirely sure how to pronounce Schupruck.
Now, can you spell it?
No.
You know what?
Not at
Part
all.
of the club now that knows how to say it.
TSHU.
I've done that.
TSCH.
Is there a surprise X in there?
No, but actually the T is silent. It's actually TSCHUPRUK.
Wow.
THCHURVK.
Honestly, I spelled his
Alphabet
name
soup.
so many times wrong already to this day. It's the C that gets me.
And they still call you out on it.
There's
to
no
this
C
day.
in Adam.
Secret spelling.
There's someone out there who has Adam spelled with a C, and the C is silent.
Oh,
I'm sure that exists.
We need to meet them.
Definitely.
When I was younger, used to take horseback riding lessons, and at the time, my brother and I were the only two boys that went there. There was a point where everybody in our class, including the instructor, was named Megan. And
Gosh.
all of them spelled it differently.
Oh, no.
We had a lesson board which would say which horse we were on for that day, and we'd go and it would be MEAGAN, MEAGEN, MEAGEN, MEGAN, MEGHAN, just so every iteration of the name Megan.
Why did they have to do that? Why did us as humans have to just
If you're a
do
parent,
this?
public PSA, if you're a parent and you have a child and you decide to name it Megan, make it the simplest one.
What's the simplest Megan?
MEGAN.
Yeah, I agree.
Everyone, all the other ones are wrong.
I've seen a Megan. I've literally seen a Megan MEGEAN. Why do you put the E in there?
Please feel free to drop your comments
Right?
in the chat.
It's if your name is Megan, write your comments in the chat.
Yeah,
I grew up with a Megan.
Megan's
as well.
Unite.
Oh, yeah.
Great way to start a podcast, alienating everyone.
Every
named
Megan, every Megan that's not spelled correctly, you know who you are.
Yes.
You know who you are.
Rescind all
Megans.
that. If your name is Megan and you're listening, we love you. You're amazing. You're wonderful.
Shout out to Megan.
Change for no one.
Yes.
So I actually didn't even introduce what you do or who you are. I just said Ahmed.
Someone's finally going to tell me. Thank God.
Oh my God! I've been waiting.
I'm finally going to know. What am I? Who am I?
But Ahmed's been working with us for a little bit now, and this new year that we have coming up, we're actually going to have you, and we've talked about this before, come on and teach here at Act with Purpose. So first of all, we'd like to thank you, and we want to welcome you into our family.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Very exciting.
Absolutely. And I'm curious to know, because actually I don't recall, how did you guys meet? How did this all come together?
Pramika.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
All roads lead back to Pramika.
Right?
Yes.
So
Pramika's
funny.
I got our heads.
Tanu.
Right?
Everyone.
Yeah.
But so, look, I like reaching out to my network of clients. And Pramika started out with me as a client, oh my gosh, when she was I want to say 10.
Wow.
And like I wish she was here so I could embarrass her.
Yeah.
But she used to do this monologue that was from Tarzan. And she did the whole talking about beating your chest and like all that crazy stuff.
My gosh.
Like she used to do this really physical, crazy monologue that for a 10-year-old was so bold. And especially for a girl, especially at that time, because it was before BIPOC and all that sort of thing. So she really went on a limb and she made a spectacle of herself. And every single person remembered her. And I remember thinking, first of all, I loved her parents, and her parents were just so lovely to work with. But in any case, she was probably one of the most talented young people that I worked with at such a young age. And to see her grow and then having the opportunity to work with you on The Other Kingdom.
Oh, yeah, that's
you
right.
You keep forgetting.
Sorry.
We won't tell her.
Well, if she wants, she'll know. I'm sorry for Mika. I don't. Did she not remember me either, though? I feel like because we weren't in the same scene.
I don't think you were in the same scene.
We weren't in the same scenes.
But that was a fun connection. And then, so it was only natural that when I was looking for some people to bring into my circle and to create a network of coaches that all worked well together and could support one another, but also could work independently. And Ahmed has been a huge gift and has, I think, again, kind of like Jonathan Segal in a lot of ways. Refer to episode 5. But I like finding people that teach differently than I do. Because I think what's the point of having 15 clones? Yeah. You're going to have the same sort of experience, or you're going to leave with the same sort of knowledge. So I love being able to really put our actors first and give them the opportunity to work with lots of different mindsets and different skill sets, and to then be able to create their own personal technique that works for them.
Yeah.
So anyway, I love that you teach differently than I do, and I know you were really nervous about it at first. You're like,
I was like, oh, John might not like me.
So tell me about that. Was that like the first encounter?
My not like the first encounter, because we had a chat after Pramika connected us initially, and I sat in on one of your classes just to kind of like shadow it way back at the start of this year, I guess.
Yeah.
Jesus, where's the
Hard
time going?
I know, crazy.
And yeah, it was a lot of. It's a very different approach. Like the school you came up in, it's stuff I've learned and like been through and like sat through classes of. And there is value in it, in a lot of it. It's things I found weren't serving me a whole lot, or rather, at least the way they were presented. Things like objectives and tactics, that stuff. My problem, one of my problems as an actor, which I feel like a lot of actors have, is I love intellectualizing things, and I would have such a hard time getting out of my head and just like being here, like doing this, just looking at somebody and talking to them, right? I instead just wanted to like mind the scene and, craft this thing to perform instead of living in an experience that I was having with another actor in the moment, right? Which isn't to say that if you, are an actor who, plans out a scene and uses objectives and tactics that you're doing bad work. I think it was, don't quote me on this, but it was an interview with Sir Laurence Olivier, very like old school, like golden era of Hollywood actor who was talking about his process, and he was somebody who would like hyper plan out everything. He knew that like on this word, I'm going to be taking a step with this foot. I'm going to be picking up this glass, and when I get here, I'm going to do this. And he would just like rehearse a million times, right? If you can do that and make it look like Sir Laurence Olivier, great, do that. I'm not the guy to teach that because I don't know how to do that, right? But there, like you were saying, I don't think there's a way to do this work. There's a bunch of ways that work, and I think our journeys as actors is figuring out what those ways are for us.
Yeah.
And finding places that will allow us to be exploratory and curious and create our own process. I need to give a shout out to Meredith McGeechee, who is an artistic force of liberation. Has done, I think I'll always feel indebted as an artist to some degree to her, because she's done wonders for opening me up as an actor. It's been so long since I've been in class there, I miss it. I got to go back soon.
What was it like that class?
So a big thing I saw working with her that I didn't see, I still haven't seen at most places, was in every class she would get up and work. Right? There would often be classes that had all the teachers at that studio would also be in class. Right? So there would be classes where she would jump up, tag another coach in, and have an eye on her work. And I spent like probably a good 3 or 4 years just auditing as many classes as I could, because it was so, I'd never seen before in real time how an actor's process fed into them as a teacher and allowed them to grow as a teacher and then offer more back into themselves as an actor. It was like this circular, like one thing feeding the other. You know, like her growth as an actor when she was up working grew her as a teacher, which allowed her to offer more to her students, but also to herself.
Wow.
In the work. You can teach and still be in process.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm the child of 2 parents who are both teachers, and growing up in and out of school and like extracurricular programs and stuff, I have had the opportunity to work with some really great teachers and some not so really great ones, and it's really heartening to see or to find places where you have coaches who aren't just interested in pointing out like, these are all the things you're doing wrong. Okay, now you know, as if that's what teaching is, you know. Your end goal, I think, is to help someone grow, right? Whatever that involves. That might involve you having to like throw away all the tools you had as a teacher and find something new, right? Or to you know, like in some cases, pull up your britches and be like, I don't think I'm the teacher for you. I think what you need is out there. Not you aren't a good actor, just I don't think I'm the coach to coach you, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I've had people that I couldn't reach.
Totally.
And I've had to have that very conversation with people. And I'm like, you could keep coming to classes with me, but I just don't think. And there's a number of different elements to that. But I think that's one of the reasons why I do like working with you is I think, excuse me, I grew up learning differently than most people. And so it wasn't until I was in high school that I even got introduced to different learning styles. I'm like, well, now it's too late.
Yeah.
I missed out on so much. And I was labeled as being not smart.
Yes. Yeah.
And then it wasn't until I got into like 3rd and 4th grade that they were like, wait a minute, maybe he's actually advanced. So then they started testing me for all these gifted programs. And suddenly I was like, they realized something completely different. But then by then, most of my early, education had already been blown. So it wasn't until much later in my schooling that I started to understand different learning styles. And I think the same thing applies to acting. There are some people who are going to get a lot out of what I teach and the way I teach it. There are going to be others who go, okay, there's 1 or 2 things I can take away from that. I'll keep those things, but the other things don't necessarily work for me. And that's where I feel like yourself, Jonathan Segal, and Justin Michael Carrier, Adam Sanders, Adam Shuprook, all of us all bring in different aspects to help support and fill in the blanks. And I think that's what I really appreciate about your teaching style is that it, in the end, we're all doing the same thing. We're trying to make sure that we are taking care of actors and
Yes.
helping and supporting them and guiding them. And it's not always from, and that's one of the things I love about ACE, is like it's not coming from this like guru standpoint.
Yeah.
It's just being real with people.
Yeah. Something that was so cool about spending time watching Meredith teach class and be in class was that she probably said this at some point, that she was providing a place where we could create our own process, not learn one. You know, not like I have the answers here, learn how to do this thing, get good at it. You know, so much of acting process and like business-wise is not linear. You know, as I'm sure you probably know a lot better than I do because you have a few years on me in this. Just a couple. But there's so much to be said for that. I think in artistic ventures or just learning any kind of skill or getting better at something. It's not always about somebody showing you, okay, you follow step 1, 2, 3, and now you know how to be an actor. You know, the best thing I think you can do for an actor is provide them a space where they can explore and learn to uncover what their own process is. You know, in the same way that like a good therapist isn't a therapist that'll fix all your problems.
Yeah.
It's somebody who will sit with you and provide you time and understanding and information so that you can fix your problems yourself. Right? Yeah.
I think that's huge. And I really appreciate exactly where you're coming from on that. I've had people approach me saying, you know, you should brand your technique and it's the John Stevens technique. I'm like, but the John Stevens technique works for me.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the John Stevens technique. It's
Yeah,
not going to
yeah.
work for Adam Peddle
Right,
or for Joe
right.
Schmo off the street or just anybody. Like, and it took me like again, I have a lot of years. Oh God,
Just a couple. Just like 1 or 2.
So I've had the time to work with a lot of different coaches, a lot of different styles, and I pride myself on being able to. I figured out what works for me.
Yeah.
But that again, because I've had that experience with learning styles, I know that that's not going to be just a blanket answer for every single
Yeah.
person. I know that those are the things I've learned, my coping mechanisms. I've learned the techniques that work for me, and that's all I can focus on.
Yeah.
I can share those things, and I can share the other things I experienced to get to this point. But in the end, we all do have to come up with our own personal acting
Agreed.
technique.
I see it one way where it's like you have a basket of different things or like a mosaic of different tools that you picked up along the way. And like as you learn acting, you're kind of filling in your own mosaic of what you see acting as. And then when I go to teach, I used to teach way back when, I would bring my mosaic and go, okay, well, you could try this. You could try this that I also know. You could try this. And then you could take it or leave it. You know, you could take it and put it on your own mosaic.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and that's how acting should be. And, you know, a little bit of self-promo here. That's what we're trying to do here at Act with Purpose is bringing people like you, like John, like Adam, like Isabella, like Tanu, to come in and show me what your mosaic is, make it very different, and have our students try it all out. Try it all out, see what you like, and grow with it. Take it and go. Like we want you to actually feel like you got a lot out of it, like with different variety of people.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I had someone I worked with, David Real, who had a really good kind of way of putting it, which was he described coaching as I'm not going to like give you any magical answers or any magic pill. I like to think of this as we're all like in the woods and we're on a scavenger hunt looking for stuff. I'm just the guy with the flashlight. And every now and then I'm going to point it in a direction and be like, oh, let's go check that out. Let's go over here. But it's not just a...
I love that analogy.
I
Yeah.
know.
It's
You
like-
told me that on Zoom and it was amazing.
It's a collaborative process,
It
right?
should
It's
be,
not just
yeah.
something where like I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, well you could have done this better, you could have done that better. Why'd you do that?
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's a collaboration. We're
Yeah.
creating something together, and
Yeah,
through
yeah.
that we're growing and learning.
Yeah.
Right. Not
Love
just
that.
you as the student, but me as the coach as well. Right. Yeah.
I think there's one good analogy that I've always heard John say is that you have to think of your acting training like you're going down the aisle at a grocery store, right? And it's like you're gonna have to, find something here on the shelf, put it in your cart, find something else, put that in your cart. And it's like that's how you should look at your acting training, because you're gonna go to a bunch of different people. You don't want to stick with the same person, because then you're just gonna keep learning the same things, right?
That is so true. And also, you have to realize your cart isn't permanent. Like something can work for you now. There's acting techniques that I used when I was in my 20s that now I'm like, oh, I so outgrew that. Like
I used to like tomato soup, and now I'm more of like a chicken.
Yeah,
chicken noodle.
Now I'm hungry.
Right.
But yeah, I mean that's the thing is like people and I feel like sometimes people feel like, well, but I'm this actor, and it's like. But you don't have to be. You can change and you can grow and you can add to and take away from and evolve.
Yeah,
Totally.
And go ahead.
I was going to say that analogy reminded me of any of you read or know of a book called The Book of Five Rings?
No.
It's this this manuscript written by this samurai named Miyamoto Musashi, and it's a book on swordsmanship essentially. Right, he talks about like how to become a master swordsman. He had this like mythic kind of legacy of like defeating like a few hundred people in like single one-on-one combat. So this like legendary samurai. So he writes this book called The Book of Five Rings, and in it he talks about how the process of like being a master swordsman is not just I'm paraphrasing a lot, by the way.
Copyright infringement.
Yeah. Well, it was written like thousands of years ago. So it's in the public domain, but you're not going to find this verbatim in the book. But he talks about how the process of becoming a master swordsman is not just spending 24 hours a day in the dojo and practicing your forward strike or your block or something like that. That's part of it. But he talks about how a master swordsman should also, know the ways of a merchant. They should know how to write poetry and do calligraphy and all these other things that are exterior to it. The idea being that there's a line in the book that kind of sums it up really beautifully. When you understand the way broadly, you see it in all things, right? Kind of meaning that your understanding of one thing, one singular thing, like how to swing a sword, will grow your understanding of how to write poetry, which will grow your understanding of how to, plant trees or whatever it is, right? Mastery is transferable across skill sets. The overarching idea being that the more deeply you understand one thing, the more deeply you can transfer that understanding into anything else you do. So
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that a lot.
And it's the reason why, there's a lot of. So I'm very interested in mindsets and athletic mindset, because there's a lot of stuff that I feel like is transferable to what we do as artists, right? But we don't immediately go to because we think, football players are doing something very different than actors. But in a way, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of. We spend a lot of time training, preparing for an event, and then it's game time, and we have to deal with nerves, anxiety, all these external factors, how we're feeling on the day of, and that affects our game, right? So the better we can get with being malleable or flexible or adapting when things aren't ideal, right? And the more that we can integrate that into our training, I think the more longevity there will be in us as actors, because I'm sure you could, speak to this more than I could. This industry can burn you out.
Oh yeah.
Or spit you out.
Or
try to.
It can be very taxing on you, just as a human.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to have. I think you have to. Inclusive to your acting process has to be a practice that is giving you some kind of sustenance and includes self-care and is growing you, not just in like making your acting better, but also like growing you and making you more whole as a human being.
Yeah. Well, I'm a huge believer where, what you're bringing to the screen is a human being, right? And if you, as a human being, all you do is train acting, well, then now you're presenting an actor. You know, and like that's what you're presenting.
Totally.
You know, go out with your friends. Go to that place you've never experienced before. Like, don't, you know, go be a worldly person. Read a book. Like you told me a couple
Go get
books.
involved in life.
Yeah, get involved in life because
like
then
get
once
those,
you
get those special skills, right?
Yeah, just like get those experiences of the world, right? Because that's what we're trying to present.
That's the thing is like I find some of the most fascinating actors to watch have been through things, have seen things, have done things that have nothing to do with acting.
No,
and it's not necessarily about a special skill, but it's just having life experience. If you have life experience, when you come back to a role, you are so much
It
more,
integrates. Right? Like I was talking about, it's transferable.
And I find those actors to be so much more three-dimensional. And I think we did a TikTok about this at one point where we said, like, if you parents, if you want your kids to be well-rounded actors, they have to be well-rounded human beings first. So put them in horseback riding, let them take a drumming class, let them travel, art, coding, whatever it is. Let them do all of those things.
Totally.
But I think it's important to get out there and experience, different things.
Yeah, and not only to help your acting as well, helping your network. Like I've always told some actors, and there's a few actors that like they shelter themselves. Like I'm just going here. I'm just going to go to my class. I'm just going to go to work. I'm going to do nothing else.
Yeah,
it's like, well, actually go out and meet people. Introduce yourself to new people.
Yeah.
Like that interaction. That experience of meeting different people and how you react differently to certain people is very valuable. That's what you're doing in most of the time in acting is interacting with people. You know?
It also, I found for myself, time away, it usually is great for integration.
Yeah.
Right? Like I was saying, back to that whole like Book of Five Rings thing, right? If you want to be a master swordsman, don't just spend your entire life in a dojo swinging a sword. Right, there are things beyond that will aid that, right? There was so I got big into running years back. I forget how much of this we have or haven't talked about, but we've got time, I suppose.
Oh yeah.
So I used to be a lot heavier when I was younger, like a lot heavier, and at a certain point I was like, I want to run a marathon. Partially to just drop some weight, and also because of like sick and tired of being sick and tired a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Started running
Good for you.
and had a whole journey with it. And during the pandemic, started working with this running coach. And I'd been doing it for, like I started running seriously, I'd say in like 2012. So I'd already been doing it for quite a while, but realized I haven't spent much time on like technique. Right, like I've just I like got myself to a healthy weight, and I was like, okay, I'm young, my body can take a certain amount of abuse. Let's just put some calories in her and just get out there. And
Were you Phoebe?
Sir Phoebe.
Phoebe from Friends.
Running.
I was gonna say like, oh my gosh, Forrest Gump.
Forrest run.
No technique in Forrest Gump. He just goes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
A little bit for a time.
But it's interesting that people don't think of necessarily technique with something like that. But
Totally.
anything that you want to do well, there is technique.
Oh,
to it,
absolutely.
right?
So
I love that you like actually researched it.
So I started working with this guy named Russian guy named Igor. It was all on Zoom because this was like middle of the pandemic, right, or start of it rather. And our training consisted a lot of gave me these drills to do, and the idea was that you practice these drills, like how to snap your leg up in a particular way, and you drill them and drill them and drill them, and over time, it's not that when you go out to run, you're trying to consciously think of like, okay, I need to make sure I'm pulling my leg in this way, and I'm leaning forward in this way, and my posture is like this. The goal is over time, moving your body in that repetitive pattern will integrate into your body, and when your body goes to run, it'll just move like that.
Like muscle memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we spend like, maybe it's probably about 6 months in. He said something that like really stuck with me. It's like older Russian guy named Igor. He sounds exactly what you think he sounds like.
Oh my gosh.
Love it.
I was having kind of like a day, and we jump on our Zoom call and are like chatting about stuff, about like the footage I'd sent him that week of my form. And kind of just like throw a little bit of a hissy fit and start rambling about how like, look, I've been doing this for so long, and like I can. It feels good when I'm doing the drills. I know I'm doing the technique properly then, but when I do my like short runs or long runs, I don't feel like it's showing up at all. I feel like clunkier. It's just like kind of having a vent sesh, right? And Igor goes, I love you. He's never going to watch this, but if you are somehow, I love you, Igor. He goes, Ahmed, you're a smart boy, but sometimes you think too much, which is probably the most on-the-nose thing anyone's ever said to me. And he said, there are no drills, there are no long runs or short runs or tempo runs, there is no practice run, there is no race day. All there is the step you are taking now. And that just I was like, kind of just, like I took him and I was like, well, fuck. Where did you pull that out of?
Right?
That's pretty wild. That's very much in the moment.
Totally.
Focus on one.
I really
Totally.
like that though,
And-
as a
and-
metaphor for life.
Yeah,
totally.
And so
One
I
step.
took a minute and I thought about that and I was like, okay, if that's true, and all that matters is the step you're taking now, then that means there's like no room for satisfaction, right? And he goes like, yes, correct. I was like, of course.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, but then
Yeah.
if there's no room for that, like, what's the fucking point? Like,
Right.
you know?
Right?
And without skipping a beat, he goes, joy. And it was just another moment of like, oh,
Oh.
God damn it.
You know what's funny? I heard something about that where, you know, training your mind to not focus on the result.
Totally.
Focus
Yes.
like, because then when we focus on the result, what we're doing is we want that, our brains want that dopamine kick at the end of doing it.
Yes.
But we starve ourselves of that dopamine
Absolutely.
all the way through, and that's why it's so painful to get through every day or anything that we
Yeah.
do. But if you enjoy the growth, and I love that we're kind of
Oh.
comparing this, then you don't have that end result in mind, and you
Yeah.
just enjoy that growth
Yeah.
process.
It was something that immediately, like as he said it, made perfect sense to me in the like frame of running that we were talking about, but immediately like layered itself onto me as an actor, and I was like, this illuminates like all my like core difficulties or problems as an actor, right?
Right.
Every time I let go of an expectation or a result of how I think the scene should look and just free myself up to be or feel something, or just like sit with my scene partner and just like look at them and be like, oh, you look so like heavy, right? And just be, that's when my work is like, oh yeah, I'd hire that guy. Or like whether I book a job or not with it, I at least enjoy watching myself act.
Yeah.
Not like watching it going like, yeah, I can see that I'm full of shit.
So that's actually a perfect segue into what I wanted to bring up. Speaking of things that, you know, really make you remember when someone says something. You said something one time, and it honestly changed the way that I coach and the way
Oh.
actually with my own acting. You said that as long as you look at your scene partner's face, that is food for your acting.
Yeah.
And I still remember that, you know, whenever I coach kids as well, I always think of that.
I need to be 100% transparent, and I straight up stole that from Meredith McGeechee.
This is exactly what I'm talking about.
Shout out.
Mosaics. They're going around. Everyone likes it. Take a piece.
Shout out again to Meredith McGeechee. She said that to me once in an acting class. She was like, if you don't know what to do, look at your scene partner. Their face is, as long as you have somebody who is present and like there with you, whatever's going on in them, that's food for your acting. It's so true.
I mean, like, I was on set one time, and this is back in the day when, like, I truthfully, like, didn't understand my acting. I look back at it now, and I'm like, I would do a lot differently.
Sure.
But at the time, you know, it was also a Nickelodeon thing where I had to be bigger, and I had to kind of, like, do what they told me to do.
Very specific tone.
You
Very
Had
Yeah.
to be bigger.
Yeah. Oh,
Bigger
yeah,
than
already.
what?
No,
Wait.
trust me. Sometimes they'd say not big enough. Go more. And I'm like, oh my God.
How big do you want it?
Anyway, so and some of the scenes were like very like it's like they were meant to be over dramatized, where it's like I'm faking a stomach ache, and they're like really like overdo it, where it's like so and it was like like obviously you see someone doing that, you're like you're full of crap, right? You know what I mean? And so then one interesting thing is my acting coach on that set. The other actor was my dad or whatever. I forget who he was in the relationship, but he was like the dad of the guy who was like rooming with, and he was like my co-parent or whatever. Long story short, he was in charge of me going to school that day, and I was faking a stomach illness. But he was such a in the moment actor, like reading like faces, reading body language. So he's like, so we went to the acting coach. He's like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this kid. He's so obviously faking it. Like, how am I? And his next line is he's supposed to believe that like I am actually sick, but the script says I'm supposed to like be over dramatic. So he's like, what do I do here? Like, I don't understand. So he had to find a way around it where it's like, okay, well, I can clearly tell you're faking it, but I'm gonna play it off in my next line. Like, okay, well, I guess I'll let you stay because I'm being nice to you or something. You know what I mean? So it's like it's different when you have two people who are doing on totally different spectrums of acting.
Yeah.
And you're trying to read, but they're in another world, and you, as an actor, know that they're in another world and they're not right here. Have you ever encountered something like that in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, it makes me just think of like how valuable listening to me is like if there was anything that's a backbone of, like we talked about this the other day, we had a little chat. And you're like, so like, what's your approach? Like, what's your technique kind of? And I was like, I don't know. It's a bunch of things, I guess.
Yeah.
But if there's like a singular thing that was like the center of it, it's, just listening, because when all else failed, like I remember having a reader in an in-person audition way back when, and they never looked at me once. They walked me into the room and action rolling, and they had their head in the page the entire time. And like, no fault to that person. Like, maybe you were filling in for somebody that day or something, and you were just like, okay, I'm just going to read these lines. And I remember being so frustrated at like, man, I could have done such a better job if they gave me something. Right. I had a coach of mine named David, someone I do Meisner with, along with some other Davids. He said, why not just let yourself be pissed off at that person in the moment for not looking at you, right? Just like do the scene, even if it's maybe not the right choice to make. At least your acting will be like grounded and alive and authentic, right, and something real. And then you can adjust from that. You can take a direction from like a truthful, honest, grounded place. It's a lot harder to take a direction from a like, oh, I'm trying to do the scene right. It's something that I think is so valuable about having a way of working that is not result oriented, or about like, oh, when will I figure it out, or when will I get the answer, is that you're going to constantly have an ongoing process and be learning new things about yourself as an actor, as a person in process. And yeah, like going back to what I was saying earlier, it's so, I think, important to have a practice that is taking care of you in that regard, giving you some kind of like longevity and ongoing growth to sustain you, because the business won't. Like some people get lucky and maybe it will for them, but we can't. I don't think we can afford to hold our breath as actors that like, oh, I'll get lucky maybe, and the industry will take care of me, because 9 times out of 10, that it's
even
not
less.
going to.
Yeah.
So we got to have our own back.
I was going to ask you. You told me over Zoom that you feel like this is the first year, and you've been acting for a while now. This is the first year where you feel like acting's almost becoming my job now.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit about that? Because a lot of people think it happens really soon when you get into it. So, tell me.
It's been a very good year. I've been fortunate that I've been working a lot. A lot of it's been commercial work, and as artistically unfulfilling as that can be at times, it also pays the bills and affords me to, put my time into things that I do find artistically fulfilling. Yeah, it's. I mean, I think it's a mixture of things, like me coming to a place where, in my process, I'm not. I used to be so needy as an actor. I'd go into a room and I was just like, oh, I hope you're gonna like me. I hope I do this right. I hope I made the right choice. And on camera, you can see that.
Oh yeah.
You can see that kind of like, oh please like me.
I used to watch back some old self tapes of me, and oh my god,
it's
so try hard.
It still happens.
It happens. It's natural.
It's a thing I think we constantly deal with to some degree and get better at making friends with, but it's a combination, I think, of having come to a place in my work where I'm no longer like leading with that. I walk in most of the time having at least like in my own skin and in my own body, and just like, okay, let's at the very least play and have fun. Maybe it's a commercial job and I don't have something artistic to share, but I'm here and like, let's play for the next 5 minutes.
Right.
Let's like take a ridiculous note. But also just having letting go of, trying to get the right agent and trying to get the right headshots and all these things, releasing a need for that and just like, okay, I'm just going to focus on me for a while, kind of resulted in me like, oh, I kind of landed in a place that I'm really happy with an agent. I kind of am getting seen by the people I want to see. Just a lot of things lined up and clicked, and I've been fortunate that it's resulted in working a lot, which has been great, and also we could just, I think, have a whole separate podcast about how life on set has changed, over the last couple of years.
It's insane.
Yeah, I haven't been on set. I know John's been on set. Have you been on set, Adam, since COVID?
Yeah, I've been on set twice since COVID. Yeah,
wow.
Three times since COVID. Yeah.
Okay, so all of you guys have been on set. Like, what is that like now? Like, what's the main difference? Obviously, is there still masks mandates in 2022?
To some certain extent. I mean, I think that the film industry is trying to be a little bit more careful than maybe some, and depending on the production too.
Right.
There are certain precautions that I think, need to be taken just so that it doesn't throw off the, filming schedule.
Yeah.
Right.
But at the same time, I do think it's starting to relax, and that's nice to see, just because it does. No matter how you slice it, there are people who get excluded. That it's unfortunate. There's some really good artists out there who do have certain health requirements that don't allow them to have the same liberties that other people do. So it's nice to see that slowly easing.
Beyond just like the COVID stuff and how that's changed, the logistics of being on set, something I've noticed is there are quite a lot of actors who have never who jumped into acting during the pandemic, or maybe shortly before it started, and have most of their experience of acting has been self-tapes and Zoom auditions.
Wow, yeah.
Right? And seeing them being kind of rattled with the like, oh, I'm in a physical space with a person and they're like maybe yelling at me or saying a thing and there's a huge shift, right, that I think a lot of people don't expect, or a lot of those actors at least certainly don't expect and weren't ready for. And I think that's something that's important to suss out for yourself, because Zoom auditions and self-tapes aren't going anywhere anytime soon.
No. And that's what's kind of unfortunate,
Unfortunate. I don't know.
There's a positive, negative.
Yeah. I'm relentlessly positive, and I try to focus on the fact that more actors are being seen. Totally. Casting directors aren't having to spend money on studios and that sort of thing. Yes. But again, if you own Milestone Studios, then that's not a happy thing. So it's a give and take.
Yeah. And I feel like it affects the art of acting itself, where, I always tell parents this sometimes when they're like, oh, I would like to do online or in person. What's the big difference? The big difference is if I'm here to be a believable human being, but I have to pretend on a Zoom that you are in front of me, that's really hard. Totally. You know what I mean? And whereas when I'm in person, I don't have to pretend anymore, and I can feel you, I can hear
Yeah.
you, I can,
Yeah.
everything about that, right? So
Yeah.
smell you.
Even
But like, I feel
Please
like
don't
you
smell.
trying to tell me something, Adam?
I think he's trying.
I
to,
bathed before I came. I swear. To what you were saying, there's something just like there's like a kinesthetic, tangible difference from like having. There was some audition where me and this other guy were like having an argument, and it was all SOC. So they just wanted like a shot of two people like being angry looking and yelling at each other, right? And the director was just like, okay, yeah, just like improv an argument, just like yell at each other for 2 minutes and we'll get to stuff. And as soon as he said action, like the other actor didn't take the lead, so I did, and I just like shouted "what the fuck" as loud as I could at him, and I could see it like, oh, he wasn't like. There's a world of difference between somebody going "what the fuck, John" on a Zoom chat,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
like in space,
Turn you down.
right?
Yeah.
Oh no! I meant like in the Zoom.
Yeah, in post. But yeah, and I think actors need to be prepared for that because if you're gonna like
Acting
booking a
above.
job is great, but if you're gonna shit the bed on set, it's I'm sure stuff like that will sometimes get back to casting if it's don't hire this actor again because they were not what they they portrayed themselves to be,
Right.
But-
at least from their Zoom audition or something.
But I think one of the hardest things to explain to parents and students too is you get the same question all the time where parents like they hear that auditions and everything are over Zoom, and when they hear the words "not in person," I always get the same thing. Well, is it legitimate? Is it still the same thing? What's the difference between doing it online and in person? And it's always like trying to explain to them that it's still the same. You're still getting the same opportunity. You're still being able to go in front of casting directors and, meeting with people in the industry. It's just the fact is you can actually get more opportunities in the long run because you're getting to be seen by more people that normally they wouldn't call in so many people if it was in person.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great transition talking about classes. Before we end
That was perfect.
Before we end this, I know it's pretty fresh right now. We've been in the talks the last few weeks about discussing what classes you would have here. So tell me a little bit about what you have in mind and kind of what you want to do with your students in the class coming in January.
Like we said earlier, I would love to just pay forward what other great coaches have done for me and provide a space where I can give you my eye and we can together find ways to allow you to create a process that is your process and is unique to you, right? And is not just me being like, oh, why don't you try this? Like there are things that will work for you and things that won't. Let's find the ones that do and that speak to you and that speak to your artist. Just because we just mentioned it, like if there's a singular thing I would like to do with my classes, it's empower actors in themselves and their instrument as people. Yeah. Just because if you can do that, like, technique is so secondary. That's like 80% of it, Right. Because like technique is not it's not difficult to be like, okay, make sure you're looking at this eye line. This is what an eye line is. That stuff is all pretty easy to pick up. That's not the hard part of this work.
Yeah.
The hard part is more like the self work we have to do, right, as people and as artists. It does just as much for me as an actor as it is going to be doing for it. Like I said towards the start of this conversation, watching people in the work, just observing as well, I learned so much from, and realizing that, just being an eye on somebody's work is also going to grow me as an actor, right? It's a very symbiotic relationship and very rewarding for myself as well. Yeah.
100%.
Thank you for the
Awesome.
opportunity.
Well, I'm excited for you, and I'm excited for the students to have the opportunity. So
Yeah, absolutely.
it's really them.
Yeah.
So
100%. But with that being said, Ahmed, thank you so much for coming in and talking today and
Thanks for
sharing
having
your
me.
thoughts. I love hearing about how intellectual, you're a very intellectual man. And I loved hearing about all your thoughts and your own journey and your own
Thanks.
process.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, so thank you for
Appreciate it.
sharing.
Thanks for having me.
All right, guys. See you next time. Like, comment, subscribe on this video if you enjoyed. Share it to your friends if you think that they might enjoy this. And yeah, until next time.
Ciao for now.
Bye, everyone.
Guys.